of non-Muslim children. But this year, we know that the Selangor state government, the Selangor legislator are seeking to pass a bill to allow unilateral conversion. And we also know that from a practical point of view, Indira Gandhi has not been reunited with her daughter, even with the federal court decision last year. Today, let's just first welcome our guest today, Shareena from Sister in Islam. Professor Shad Saleem Faruqi, who is so well known in terms of constitutional law, legal experts, and Arun Dorasamy, who is from INGAT, a NGO set up specifically to actually help Indira to be reunited with her younger daughter. Perhaps we could talk about from the practical point of view. You know, we have a landmark decision from the federal court, but yet an aggrieved mother has yet to be reunited with her daughter. Can you just tell us a little bit updates on this?
Actually, it's almost, we can say, the operation is successful, the patient is dead. So pretty much we have a landmark decision with us, and that's a good thing for Indira, but we still not repatriated the baby with the mother. So that's why INGAT was formed, so that we can collect resources and go after. And the sad thing is, the enforcement should have been from the PDRM itself. So the failure of PDRM in the beginning, all right, to act upon the order is what induced us to set up INGAT, and we are now the closest we ever been in repatriating Indira Gandhi. But the problem is it is not repatriating. That's another problem. The problem is security. All right, we know that Malaysia somewhat is very much polarized right now. Very much polarized on the basis of race and religion. Right now we have a 10-year-old girl, right, growing up somewhere, and presumably she's totally been raised as a Muslim, all right? And with the virtue of the court order, if we repatriate that, how is that possible in Malaysian scenario right now? Can Indira raise her baby? What type of problem that we are facing? So right now we already have a sub team trying to handle the case post-prisoner. Post-prisoner's retrieval, because unless we have a solid doable plan with prisoner, we cannot totally pursue this. Say, so if I have prisoner tomorrow on my hand, shall I just let Indira to deal with it? Because we know there's a big group out there that do not acknowledge the landmark decision. They think it is totally not right, and actually it's a good portion of it. It is a very significant portion of the population
who doesn't recognize the law.
That does not recognize. We can scream as much as we want, but there's certain groups say no, ibu atau bapa. They're still stuck to that thing, ibu atau bapa, and it is very apparent when we see the Selangor state. I mean the state legislator was mooting unilateral conversion when the whole nation was going through a landmark case for the past 9 years. Not only Indira. We are talking about Shamla, we're talking about Revati. There's so many cases that have given us the test how difficult this is. Yet we are at this juncture. So we have a bigger problem now, and that's the reason INGAT have been calling IGP to meet. So we need to have a doable plan, and INGAT already have our own investigative team to help us to repatriate the kid with the mother. But again, we do not have that much of helping hand from the authority itself. So go figure.
Okay. Yeah, because many people might not know, if you have not gone through a custody cases, right? To enforce custody custody order from court is already very difficult, and some more now we have this unilateral conversion issues in problem where the child has already been converted or raised in other ways, or as a Muslim that you have mentioned. But it's very interesting to note that you raised this, that a large portion of people don't agree with the decision of the federal court. But Professor, perhaps you can actually explain a little bit about the landmark decision of just the main points that has been covered by federal court in terms of Indira, and how why many think that it can put a rest to the issue of unilateral conversion.
Well, actually, the decision by the court in the Indira Gandhi Muthu case has massive implications for constitutional law, administrative law, fundamental rights. So let me try to confine myself to Article 12, Clause 4, which says that education of a child shall be determined by his parent or guardian. And the main issue now is the translation of the word parent.
Yes.
I would like to approach the issue slightly differently from you, Ibu atau Bapa. My humble opinion is this. This constitution was drafted in 1957 and any amendments to it require constitutional procedures in 159 or 161E or Article 2B. Now, if the constitution is to be translated, and translation can bring about subtle informal changes, like the way what has happened in the constitution, it doesn't say father or mother, it says parent. Then there is Schedule 11, which says singular includes plural, plural includes singular. Let me just read it out to you. It's very, very clear that the constitution is always framed in the singular. It doesn't say all persons, no person shall be deprived of life or liberty. Always it's, sadly, it's also male. It's singular and it's male. But it's understood.
It covers everybody.
That singular includes plural and male includes female. You just give me a second, I'll get to Schedule 11, because many people are not aware of what Schedule 11 says. Schedule 11, Rule 2, Clause 95. Construction of a singular or plural. Words in the singular include the plural and words in the plural include the singular. So in my view, the Constitution uses the word parent. In Schedule 11, the word parent can be interpreted to mean both. Now, if you want to now apply the Bahasa Melayu translation, my personal view is the translation must go through the process of laying in Parliament, vote in Parliament by 2/3 majority, and then only it shall become the official version. So I most respectfully would like to question the use of the word Ibu atau Bapa. My submission is this is the supreme constitution of the land, and if you want to modify it either by translation or by formal amendment, go through Parliament first. So it's parent. Parent in Schedule 11 can include singular, can include plural. Now, 12 Clause 4 cannot be read in isolation. It must be read in the light of Article 8, equality before the law. Why is one parent more important than the other? Especially in the case of a 11-month, when 11-month-old baby. How can, in the case of an 11-month-old baby, a father is more important than the mother? So I think 12 Clause 4 read along with Article 8. Article 8 Clause 1, all persons are equal before the law. So the mother is as equal as the father. Article 8 Clause 2, no gender discrimination. So reading 12 Clause 4 in the light of the equality provision, the ideal of equality, I would think that unilateral conversions, Ibu atau Bapa, are totally unconstitutional. Besides the fact that they are inhuman, they reflect lack of human decency, they reflect lack of awareness of the interest of the child. In my view, they are even un-Islamic, because in Islam, the interest of the child must come first. The religion of the parent is a secondary issue. The first issue is the interest of the child. So whether it is constitutional law or Islamic law, I have to beg to differ with the interpretation of those. I'm not saying yours, those who say that it is Ibu Ata Bapa. I think they must stick to this constitution.
So, Professor, for you, the draft bill for the Selangor State Assembly, it's also unconstitutional.
Well, it's for the courts to declare so. In my personal view, it is a blatant piece of disregard of the federal court decision, and it is yes, I would accuse it of being unconstitutional, but of course you and I don't have the power to say so. Every law is constitutional till declared otherwise by the courts.
Yes.
I would think there are constitutional issues, and as I said, not only under Article 12 Clause 4, under Article 12, under Article 8. May I also point out to you this, most people won't agree with me. Equality ideal is subject to exception for family law. Article 8 is the rule of equality, but Article 8 Clause 5 says that this article does not invalidate or prohibit any provision regulating personal law. Now, the religion of a child, in my view, is not personal law, it's fundamental right.
Yes.
Personal law is as defined in Schedule 9, List 2, Paragraph 1 to include things like marriage, divorce, maintenance, custody, guardianship. These are issues of personal law. So there is a humble submission of mine that when it comes to fundamental rights, personal liberty, freedom of religion, I don't think that's personal law, that's a matter of fundamental right. So Article 8 Clause 5's exception does not cover issues of freedom of religion, converting someone from one religion to the other.
Okay. All right. So, just now we've mentioned the Selangor State Assembly where they tried to pass the law. So it would actually open it would become a ground to be challenged in future. That's what Professor think, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So actually, in the case of Indira Gandhi, right, not only the matter of unilateral conversion, it also mentioned a lot of things about the jurisdiction of the Sharia court in terms of judicial review. Can Professor talk a little bit about this?
Yeah. Well, the Indira Gandhi case has beautifully summed up the issue. In fact, before the Indira Gandhi case, the Court of Appeal dissenting judge, Justice Sultan Hamid Sultan, Justice Hamid Sultan Abu Bakr, in a very learned, simple language, he actually summed up the issue, and basically his point was this, and I am in full agreement with him: as long as the Sharia court remains within its jurisdiction, the civil courts have no right to interfere.
Okay.
So, if there is a dispute between a Muslim husband and a Muslim wife on marital issues, matter goes to the Sharia court.
Yes.
The civil courts have no right to interfere. Now, Justice Hamid very correctly pointed out, if one of the parties is a non-Muslim and one party only is a Muslim, then right away Sharia court has no jurisdiction. Certainly in the Indira Gandhi case, the affected mother,
Yes.
her life is shattered. Surely she is an affected party. Since she is a non-Muslim, Sharia court has no jurisdiction over her or over the case. Because Sharia court has no jurisdiction over her, and why is that? Because Schedule 9, List 2, Paragraph 1 says, Sharia court shall have jurisdiction only over persons professing the religion of Islam. So, Sharia court has no jurisdiction over her. That means she cannot appear before the Sharia courts. That means they cannot give an order against her. They cannot affect her rights. It makes sense that the matter must go to a court which has jurisdiction over both, and that is the civil court. Now, after the Indira Gandhi case, a number of very significant points on the Sharia court, civil court jurisdiction have been outlined, and may I just summarize them for you. Civil courts cannot interfere in the lawful decisions of the Sharia courts made within jurisdiction. I think that's the impact of Article 121 brackets 1 capital A. And from the decision of the Sharia court, no appeal lies to the civil courts if the Sharia court was within its jurisdiction. But to this general rule, number of exceptions have to be accepted. Number one, if there is a constitutional issue, especially involving human rights, then the civil courts cannot be ousted. On matters of constitutional law, the Sharia courts are not qualified either by training or temperament to be able to handle issues of constitutional law. So that's one exception. On an issue of constitutional law, especially fundamental rights, civil courts have to come in. Secondly, if the Sharia court is exceeding its jurisdiction as to the persons that it is trying, then the civil court will have the right to say you are exceeding your jurisdiction. Thirdly, if the Sharia court is exceeding the topics, the subject matter, which is not allocated to it by Schedule 9, List 2, Paragraph 1, here again the civil courts will have the right to say you are exceeding your power. Please bear in mind that the jurisdiction of the Sharia courts must be explicitly conferred. It is not implied. It must be clearly conferred. Number 4, Article 121 brackets 1A immunizes Sharia courts from the civil court interference, does not immunize Sharia officials. Do you see the difference? The registrar of mu'allafs is not a Sharia court. He's
So
a
their
Sharia
decision
official.
can be challenged.
He is not protected by 121(1)(a). This blank check power that they all seem to think they have,
Yes.
because they have this magical word Sharia next to their designation. That's it. 121(a) shields them. That's not true. 121(a) is about Sharia courts, not about the 100,000 or so people who may be lecturers or officials or enforcement officers. Yeah. Okay, then if, I don't know what number I'm on, number 5 or number 6, if the administrative officers of the Sharia violate the Sharia enactment itself, then the High Court will have the power to say you are ultra viris. Now, in the Indira Gandhi case, it was very clear, very, very clear that the registrar of mu'allafs was blatantly disregarding Section 18. Let me just check. Let me just check the sections of the law. The law was being blatantly disregarded because under the Perak law, as was involved, the Perak sections were sections 50 clause 3 of the Perak enactment. Basically what this section said is this, that the person who wishes to convert must apply. The person who wishes to convert must be present. He must read the Shahada. He must understand the Shahada. None of these requirements were present.
Yes.
Especially in the case of Prasanna, 11-month-old baby. Absolutely none. So, in fact, in most of the Sharia enactments, most if not all, a minor cannot be converted.
Yes.
Person has to apply. He must read the Shahada. He must understand what its implications are. So the Registrar of Muallafs was blatantly violating his own Sharia enactment. But the Court of Appeal in its wisdom said, doesn't matter, as long as he says I'm satisfied, all the requirements are complied with, that's sufficient. Now it requires a willing suspension of disbelief to accept this kind of argument. There's blatant disregard of the law, and the Court of Appeal said as long as the registrar is satisfied, that's good enough. What's the function of the court then? So I think number of these exceptions. And one final point, it's a little bit complicated. In all these issues that I raised, the civil court does not sit as an appeal court to the Sharia court. No, it sits as a supervisory or review court. Let me give an example. Let's say student is disciplined by his university. The student feels the disciplinary punishment awarded is too harsh. He now wants to go to the High Court to seek review. High Court will probably refuse. High Court will say, we examine the legality of the decision. We don't go to its merits. If the university has the power to punish the student with, let us say, fine up to 500 ringgit, the university stays within the 500 ringgit, the decision is final. High Court, Court of Appeal, Federal Court will not interfere because the university has the power. But if the university exceeds its power, or there was violation of procedure, or the same lecturer who reported the student also happens to be sitting on the disciplinary board, then the court will say breach of natural justice. So I just want to clarify, in all the examples that I gave, the civil courts don't substitute your judgment with their judgment. They simply say, no, you have gone beyond your power. Your decision is therefore null and void. Now this is the difference between appeal and review. In appeal, if I'm the appeal court from your decision, I can overturn your decision. I can reduce the penalty. I can increase the penalty. In review, the High Court does not look into the merits of the decision, only the legality of the decision. So if the student says, I don't have 500 ringgit to pay as a fine, can you please give me 10 strokes of the rotan? And the disciplinary board says, yes, 10 strokes of the rotan. Now that's illegal because the University Colleges Act doesn't allow strokes of the rotan. High Court can say, your punishment is ultra viris, illegal. But the High Court will not say, oh, in place of 500, you can make it 50. No, that's not the function of the High Court. So those people who are concerned about the dignity and powers of the Sharia court, I would like to advise them. The civil courts will not interfere with the Sharia courts as long as the Sharia court stays within the four corners of its jurisdiction. But if it acts unconstitutionally or ultra viris or in breach of natural justice, then what the civil court can say is, you acted wrongly, the matter is sent back to you to a different court, different Sharia court, decide again, decide according to the law. But it be sent back to the Sharia court if it is within their power. Otherwise the High Court will issue a declaration.
Yeah. Prof, I have probably a question that I want
Yes,
to...
sure.
Are you allowed to do that?
Because since he's here, it's good to have. I'm also chairman for the Hindu Conversion Action Team. Okay, I have this issue. A person was cheated. She's totally illiterate, and she was cheated to be converted. All right. So this happened, came to us. Then we want to make a police report first. Okay, this one had happened. She did not know. She did not know what was the name written, and somebody else told your name has changed. And she said, "Why change?" All right. That's when she came to us, and then we saw that there was an effort to convert her. So we went and made a police report. So it's a criminal case, right? But immediately police said, okay, you can make a case. You need to go to JPN, okay? Since they changed and all the stuff. And then went to JPN. JPN said, oh, this one you have to go to Sharia court. So now that after Prof said, okay, is this mean that we can challenge the registrar of Mu'allaf in a civil court, because she's totally within the criminal breach of her rights, right? But none of the system allows her to defend her rights, right? So, and we were stuck, and I have dozens of cases like this where I have to go through the drooling process of Sharia court, where reconverting her is not guaranteed at all. In every 10 cases, we might be lucky once or twice, and that's so. How do I mean, and this is not a smaller group. We're talking about big thousands. So how do I? Because I saw Prof was talking about this registrar of Mu'allaf.
Yeah. Well, what I was saying is this: that Article 121A immunizes Sharia courts, doesn't immunize Sharia officials, and this has been my opinion for a long time, and I'm so happy that the Indira Gandhi case also says that. So you would have a chance of challenging the malicious mala fide, that is in bad faith or ultra vires action of the registrar of Mu'allafs, and as you have already done, filed a police report also. There is some fraud involved here, possibly if there is fraud, it's for the police to investigate. However, bear in mind that there are civil court judges who may nevertheless say, I'm satisfied, there is no fraud, satisfied, everything went accordingly. So you have yourself observed that the chances of success are not guaranteed. But legally speaking, Registrar of Mu'allafs is not protected in any way by Article 121(1)(a). The decision of the Registrar of Mu'allafs will have to be judged on the principles of administrative law, the principle of irrationality or abuse of power, abuse of power, taking into consideration legally irrelevant factors, or acting maliciously with a personal motive. So it would not be a case of constitutional law, it would be a case of administrative law of acting mala fide or in bad faith. Another thing, if I may just be allowed,
sure.
I'm very happy that you raised the issue of this Hindu lady being converted. I just want to point out, to give a balance to our discussion,
Yes.
this issue of conversion or of unilateral conversion is often regarded by people as something of Islam versus the other religions. Actually, it's a much bigger issue. There are cases I know where there is a mixed marriage between a Christian and a Hindu. They married, they fell in love, they lived happily ever after till the child came along.
They don't.
Then there was a problem about
Which
which religion the child will belong to. Sometimes they have a prior arrangement, sometimes they don't. And then sometimes there is an agreement, all right, boys will go your side, girls will go my side. But that arrangement is not observed. And there are disputes actually even between non-Muslim mixed marriages about unilateral conversion of children. So this issue of unilateral conversion in this country has become reduced to Islam versus other religions.
Yes.
Actually, it's an issue that affects all religions. Secondly, it is an issue that affects the rights of the child. You know, we presume that the Malaysian law on this point in the Suzy Teo case of 1987 or so. Suzy Teo was a Buddhist girl, age 17, who converted to Islam or was alleged to have converted to Islam. her father objected. And he went to the court. And the court agreed with the father and said, Susie must wait till age 18. Till age 18, the father is the guardian. The father determines your religious education. Now, many people celebrated this decision that a primarily Malay judiciary took a stand in favor of the Buddhist father. However, from the constitutional law point of view, I was struck by one thing, and that is that a 17-year-old kid has no right to freedom of religion. You know, in the USA, the approach is different.
Wow.
In the USA, they don't go by 18 or 21. They say age of discretion. The court will call the child in chambers and say, son, do you know what you are doing? Why? Where will you get your support from? What happens if father cuts you off? Who will support you? And then the court decides on the basis of the child's understanding.
Oh, okay.
I am inclined to say that we are basically treating the issue as husband versus wife, father versus mother. There is a third party involved, the child.
The child, yeah.
And the third party is in some cases actually mature, wise, knowledgeable, whose rights must also be taken note of. I just want to humbly mention to us here and to your audience, the issue is really complicated, and I do not know what the simple solutions are, especially when there is a mixed marriage or when one party converts. You know, the conversion need not be to Islam.
Yes.
The conversion could be from Hinduism to Christianity,
Yes,
or
yes,
from
yeah.
Sikhism to Christianity.
Yes. Yeah.
And that may tear the family apart. And I know this has happened in some cases. So it's an issue where we need to put our heads and hearts together and look at it as broadly as possible.
Yeah, I don't know, but you know, before this government, there were actually talks about reforming the law and reform act, whereby you make it even clearer in cases of conversion, how you should deal with it. But it didn't go through. I mean, it didn't happen. Do you think like making an amendments to the law is a better way to put matters of unilateral conversion to rest? I don't know, Shareena, you haven't spoken yet, maybe. Your point of view.
I think you're referring to the Law Reform Marriage and Divorce Act,
Yes.
1976.
Yes.
So essentially, what happened? I mean, all these issues. I think the main concern is that it has such a disruptive effect. You know, such a on the family.
Yes.
And the cases that we have seen, and it's not just about the husband taking the children away. We have even seen, you know, it worked the other way, where the wives convert to Islam. And usually there is some relationship with custody, I mean, getting the custody of the children. What happened in Indira Gandhi's case was that the then husband, having converted the children, went to the Sharia court, and the Sharia court granted him custody
Yes.
of the children. And then thereafter, the High Court in Ipoh granted him custody. So there was this, conflicting orders between the two courts. And so Indira Gandhi wasn't the first time we've seen it. So it caused a lot of, I think, confusion. And even he went to the Sharia court to dissolve the marriage on the basis that his wife was not a Muslim. So when Indira Gandhi, you know, and all the cases before, you know, we sisters in Islam, together with the Joint Action Group for Gender Equality, it's a group of about 14 women's groups. We then had a thorough look at the LRA. And so, and when we tabled it in Parliament, it contained two areas. One was how to deal with the issue of divorce and custody, and secondly was to deal with the issue of conversion. The Parliament passed the first part. So at this point in time, if you're married under the civil law, under the Law Reform Divorce and Marriage and Divorce Act, even if you convert, your dissolution of the marriage occurs under that legislation, and any ancillary orders will also be granted under that legislation. I mean, because the Law Reform Divorce and Marriage Act, in relation to even division of property, all are quite different from Sharia laws. So if you look at marriage as a contractual issue, I entered under this contract, why should I exit under different contractual terms? I mean, that's a very simplistic way of looking at it. But Parliament didn't approve the law that was tabled in relation to the conversion. So that matter is outstanding. When Indira Gandhi was decided by the federal court, it was a unanimous decision as well by the federal court judges. We then again approached or made a public statement and requested the government to make that change now that you have a federal court decision, to make the change to ensure that the law reflects what the federal court judgment said, that it required both parents in order to have 100% certainty on the issue going forward. And again, that did not go through. And perhaps that is why now you're seeing, developments like what you are seeing in Selangor, because now you are having other, activities happening, trying to challenge the decision of the court, because it's not clearly legislated in any law at this point in time. They're still challenging on the same basis in terms of the interpretation of the constitution. So that remains I mean, Indira Gandhi was very clear, but it would have been really good and it would have completely settled the matter if it was clearly legislated, to allow for the matter to be decided by both parents.
Yeah, actually, it's to just compliment and, in fact, to support what you were saying just now. I personally think if a transaction or a contract is made under one law, it should be dissolved under that law. The law that is applied should be the law at the time of the transaction, not by what happens afterwards. So if I'm an employee today, I'm subject to discipline of my university today. Tomorrow I resign. Still, the old law would apply to me, because at that particular moment, when I committed the offense, if I did, or I made a decision, the old law applies. So I totally agree with you that the Law Reform Marriage and Divorce Act provision was a principle of justice. You cannot have a transaction under one law and then conveniently have a decision under a new law, because if the law was the new law, maybe the parties would not have entered into that transaction in the first place. Now, coming to your issue as to how we should go about the reform, in every country of the world this problem arises. Should law reform be done through Parliament? In Parliament also there are two possibilities, the government or private members. In England quite often that's what happens. There is some proposal that is politically suicidal, but nevertheless it is just, or it is supportive of the needs of the time. So what the government does is quietly it whispers to some private MPs and says,
you
table the bill. On the quiet, will allow MPs to vote, quote, according to their conscience, unquote. In other words, the government is giving them freedom to vote. So that's the other technique, that allow private MPs to introduce a bill which the government will clandestinely support. Third way, of course, very common, is judicial interpretation. Much of the American Constitution today is judgment. Actually, the American Constitution is one of the shortest constitutions in the world.
Yes.
But there are thousands of decisions, all handed down by the judges who added judicial colors to the legal canvas, and the Constitution grew. That's not a bad way of doing things, because the judge is not required to seek re-election. If I'm a judge, I don't care what you think about me, because I'm answerable not to you at election time. I'm answerable to my conscience, and I'm answerable to God, and I'm answerable to the Constitution. So judicial reform and development of the law is not a bad idea, though I fully agree with you that in this country where there is relatively lesser respect for judicial decisions, like the way Selangor is indicating, maybe we need certainty, more certainty. But I think that's a possible technique. Parliament or the ruling party constrained by politics, race politics, religious politics, leaves it to the judges to bear the cross, to bear the burden. A third possibility would be appoint a law reform commission. An independent law reform commission of towering personalities who don't care about what the Pasar Malam people say about them, who do what is right and who are prepared to stand up and be criticized. So I think we should explore all these possibilities. I understand the government's dilemma right now. Those who lost the last election are now adopting a what's the word, scorched earth policy. We lost the election. Now we want to make sure that what you inherit is all burnt out, destroyed. In other words, cause problems, cause tension in society, so that you cannot rule in peace. And then we can tell the people, you haven't done anything, give us back our power, we'll bring back stability. So this scorched earth policy is being employed. Anything the government does, anything that happens, not just the government does, a road accident acquires a racial connotation, a riot at the temple and the sad death of a fireman becomes a racial issue. Appointment of the AG, appointment of a Bhumiputera from Sabah Sarawak as the CJ becomes a racial issue. So I can understand the government is facing this problem. So there are other techniques then whereby what needs to be done should be done. Personally speaking, I think leaders of substance should not follow opinion polls. I think they should mold opinion, not with guns or dollars or position, but with the power of their souls. I think they should do what is right, and they should not worry about what the people are saying at that moment, because let's not forget that there are lots of very sensible people here in this country. At the moment we think sensible people are facing extinction. Not really. There are lots of very good people. There are lots of acts of interracial harmony. I have seen with my own eyes, and it was also I think on the WhatsApp recently, but with my own eyes I have seen a Malay policeman stopping his motorbike, helping an old Chinese lady cross Jalan Gasing from one end to the other. I've seen that with my own eyes, because I go on Jalan Gasing, and I think that thing takes place quite often. It's probably the same police officer or maybe his colleagues. There are lots of very good people, neighbors who help each other. I think we've got to mobilize this, mobilize the goodness in society. I refuse to believe that people who are motivated by hatred, race, religious, are in a majority. I refuse to believe that. I think there are two ends. The middle is open to persuasion. And I think that's what we need to do. We need to show leadership, and the leaders here must play the role. NGOs, like Sisters in Islam, have certainly played a role, and I think they've done a great job. I'm not so sure, I can't give numbers, but I think a lot of people see that Islam is a mansion with many rooms, many interpretations possible. The interpretation that you are giving, I know the establishment doesn't like, but there are lots of people who on the quiet admire that you are prepared to take the criticism and put forward an alternative view, and some changes are taking place. For example, now there are two talking of women in the high courts. High courts. I'm talking of Sharia High Court.
Yes.
I think in Selangor, is it?
In Selangor.
Yeah.
2 women judges.
Yes.
That's fantastic. Because the earlier dogma was women cannot judge men.
Oh.
Yes.
Oh.
I agree with Prof. I think the issue that we have in Malaysia is that the rakyat with the more progressive thinking, unfortunately they are the silent.
Too silent.
The ones that are more conservative are the ones that are coming out very loudly in terms of race and religion, and I think the silent could very likely be the majority, but they just don't let their voices be heard. So I agree completely. I think we need to start raising our voices in order to make Malaysia what we see as a unified future, one that is not polarized, as a cause of all these very loud voices that say Islam is being threatened, the Malay supremacy is being threatened. These are not necessarily the views of the majority.
But there is always a price to be paid for being too progressive or being too vocal in expressing your view. And I guess, from Sister in Islam, it's kind of, we don't have to mention far. Just your organization itself has been labeled as a deviant organization. So, yeah, since we are on it, let's talk about the recent High Court decision.
Okay.
Yeah, so I know, but because Professor just now mentioned about the jurisdiction of the civil court and the Sharia court, and in this case, it's very interesting. It's the High Court saying that it has no jurisdiction in the matter of the decision of Jais. Professor, how would you interpret or how would you read this decision that was recently made by the High Court?
I totally disagree with the learned High Court judge that he has no jurisdiction. I think the High Court is abdicating its responsibility to preserve, protect and defend the Constitution. As I mentioned earlier, the Sharia courts have jurisdiction that must be conferred by federal law.
Yes.
The Sharia court jurisdiction cannot override the chapter on fundamental rights.
Yes.
Fundamental rights regulate Schedule 9. Schedule 9 does not regulate fundamental rights.
Yes.
If fundamental rights are at stake, judges must do their duty of giving a decision on the point. Now, the idea that someone's views are against the religion of Islam, I think that is something that requires discussion. I do not mean to insult other religions.
Yes.
My understanding of Islam is that Islam does not have monopoly of truth. No one has a monopoly of truth.
That's true. There
There is no papacy. There is no priestly aristocracy. Piety comes, superiority comes from piety. The Holy Prophet said that at his sermon at Arafat. So actually anyone who pursues the search for knowledge is allowed to do so, is allowed to give his opinion. So I am a little bit troubled by this argument. X has said so, so therefore that's it, that's the truth.
Yes.
Nothing but the truth. We are not in a position. Even if that is the truth, there is another truth, and that is that there is a constitution. This constitution is the supreme law of the federation. Any law passed after Merdeka Day which is inconsistent with it shall, to the extent of the inconsistency, be void. I think the judge must address the constitutional issues. The idea that the decision of the Sharia authorities, and by the way in this case it's not a Sharia court,
Yes.
so it was not Article 121(1)(a), it's Sharia authorities. The idea that their decision on this point is absolutely final, I think has to be read in the light of other constitutional rights. I was giving these examples earlier. What if there is a fatwa to the effect that girls cannot work outside their house? Full stop. That girls cannot drive cars,
Yes.
as in Saudi Arabia.
Yes.
That there are some professions where girls are unsuitable because there is too much free mixing with the sexes. What if there is a fatwa that girls cannot go to a university where there is no segregated classrooms? Is that not a violation of Article 8, equality before the law? Article 12, rights and respect of education? Article 5, life. And life doesn't only simply mean breathing and excreting.
Yes.
Life also means the dignity of life,
Quality.
the necessities of life, mobility, all that. So I think the learned judge of the High Court is giving a blank check power to the Sharia authorities to determine life, liberty, property, the concept of happiness of all the Muslims in this country. And I don't think that is in accordance with the Constitution. I don't think that is in accordance even with the principles of Islam. Islam, as I said earlier, is a mansion with many rooms. Diversity is part of Islam. And while I accept that we have no right to issue a fatwa, surely we should have a right to express our opinions respectfully. But in this country today, if you question a fatwa, that is a criminal offense. Doesn't matter how you question. You may question it most respectfully with the best authorities at your disposal. It is still a criminal offense. I don't think that's in accordance with the Islam I was born into or I grew to love. No, I think Islam allows difference of opinion. But yes, I accept that we don't have the right to issue a fatwa, just like we don't have the right to adjudicate a case, only the court does.
Yes.
But I'm allowed to write an article
And discuss about it.
and discuss about the legal issues, contribute whatever little I know. So I don't agree with the High Court judge. I think the implications of this decision are absolutely harmful to Muslim society, Malay society. It basically means that we have become a theocracy, a religious hierarchy now makes basic decisions about our life, liberty, our religion, our property, and that's it. We cannot go to the court. The implication of this decision actually would be this, that the whole chapter on fundamental rights, and basically what happened in Sisters in Islam case, their fundamental rights are at stake. The whole chapter on fundamental rights has become irrelevant. The whole constitution has become irrelevant.
Do you think we should be worried with the Sister in Islam's case? When I said we, because I think Sister in Islam is an organization. It's incorporated under the law. So do you think we should be worried?
That's one very worrying judgment. But just to follow on from what Prof said.
Yes, yes.
I think what we need to understand is that the challenge is on as Prof said, our fundamental rights, our
Yes.
freedom of expression, the fact that we had no opportunity to be heard and to defend ourselves in the making of the fatwa, so we were not called in. The fact that the fatwa was saying that we were practicing liberalism and pluralism in religion, and when we asked for an explanation or for them to give an example of what it is in our activities that led to this, terminology being used that became a crime under Islamic laws, we were not given any explanation for it. So it's basically, very broad, very vague, and in our interpretation of it is completely in excess of their power, because there was no level of understanding in terms of what it is that was and offensive under the fatwa. I think in Malaysia, we are one of the unique countries. A fatwa is usually a religious opinion. And in fact, in the days of early Islam, you could actually go, essentially fatwa shopping to ask for opinions of people that you recognize as authorities in your religion, and to say, give your problem and ask them what they feel, is the application of Islam in this particular circumstance. In Malaysia, once a fatwa is gazetted and receives the royal assent, it becomes subsidiary legislation and it can be enforced as law. And that is where the problem is. And that is why Sisters in Islam is completely adamant. When it becomes law, when it becomes public policy, every single citizen has a right to talk about it, to criticize it, to defend their rights, because these are laws that affect us on a daily basis. And I think in relation to this, it applies to both Muslims and non-Muslims, because I think, as you said earlier, some Islamic laws do have implications on non-Muslims, such as in the case of the unilateral decision. So, what I think the issue that we are trying to put forward is that, like Prof said, Islam has many rooms in the mansion, and we would like to bring new narratives of Islam into the public debate. There are different ways of looking at different issues. Child marriage, for example, you have the one side of the spectrum saying it's part of the religion. There is another side that says no, religion must move according to society, according to development, and if there is more harm than good, then we should look at that as
certainly it's not mandated.
Yeah.
It's not mandatory.
Yeah.
There are a number of decisions from the past. For example, Halimatu Sa'diyah, where the judge said, when it comes to religion, only those practices which are mandatory will be protected by the courts. For the rest, regulation is permissible.
Yeah.
In Halimatu Sa'diyah, the girl was wearing purda at work. She was dismissed. Her lawyer argued that as part of a freedom of religion. The court said, no, it is not mandatory practice. Therefore, it is subject to regulation by the state. So surely child marriage is not mandated.
Yes.
If these kind of arguments make us into people who are liberal and plural and deviant from the religion, then it's something to question in terms of the authority, how the authority, has visioned this religion of Islam according to how they wish to interpret it. We have moved in terms of societal developments. Women have moved leaps and bounds. We are educated. We didn't used to be in the days of the Prophet and early Islam, and we earn property. We have to fend for ourselves. Everything has changed, and therefore, in our point of view, the law must change. The law is not the Quran. The law is not divine. The law is an interpretation, a human interpretation of the Quran into something which applies to the society's everyday lives, and it is the law that we are challenging, and we are questioning whether it delivers justice to all persons living under those laws. So that's an ongoing struggle, and we will continue the struggle, notwithstanding a High Court decision to that effect. But I think you brought up the issue of the company.
Yes.
So I think that is one of the areas that has really overstepped boundaries.
Very alarming.
So essentially the judge decided, I don't have the written judgment, but this is what I can repeat from what he said in the court. He said that in the interest of justice, in looking at this fatwa issue, you could lift the corporate veil and look behind the company to see who are the directing minds. And since the directing minds of this company called Sisters in Islam are Muslims, then you can impose a religion on the company and say that the company is Islam and therefore Sharia laws apply. So it is stretching it somewhat. The concept of lifting the veil, even corporate veil, even is quite limited. But I mean, we will have to challenge it going forward.
Yeah. Do you think, because Shareena, you mentioned about you're challenging the law and not the Quran or the religion itself in any ways, but do you think that the room to discuss, to debate, or even to question the law, the religion law, is getting more limited? As we are moving forward as a nation, but this room getting more and more limited in a way for all these years in Sister in
actually,
Islam?
I think yes and no. I mean, in terms of what we call safe space for people to present their views, I feel that there is more ability to do that. Very loud voices on both sides in the recent year and a half. There was so the feeling is that there is that possibility, but also there is a possibility of a lot of attacks when you don't go with the majority view or the louder view or the more conservative view. When you want to look at Islam in a more progressive way, there are a lot of attacks. So you may voice your opinion, but you have to be ready for the
repercussions,
onslaught that comes from it. That is the experience of Sisters in Islam, at least. I think in the last Sisters in Islam was around since the 80s, but in the last 30 years we have seen a proliferation of Islamic NGOs that want to talk about a more progressive Islam within different sectors. Like for us, our core issue is family laws, because we're very concerned about the status of women in the religion of Islam. There are others that talk about Islam and democracy, or Islam and other types of other areas of human rights. So this is a positive development where they are starting to put pressure, because in Malaysia, every single policy, or in my point of view, a lot of policies cutting across education, health, etc. Islam is a real influence on these policies. So it's good that people come and speak about it and say, oh, this is the way of the religion, and there's another party that challenges it. I mean, that is what democracy should bring about. The capacity and the ability to challenge, to critique, and to reach some level of consensus at the end of it.
I think so too. I agree with Shareena. I think we can be positive here. We can be optimistic that democracy is advancing for a number of reasons. Women are in a very comfortable majority in the universities.
Yes.
They are speaking up. You can't educate a person and then ask her
Shut up.
not to exercise her intelligence. So I think the women's women's point of view is definitely coming out. 60 to 65% of our students are women. Many of them are opinion leaders in their own student bodies. Another factor, of course, is that human rights have been internationalized.
Yes.
That tide cannot be stopped. You can't build dikes against international law. A third factor is NGOs, many of them internationally supported, are persistent. And the government has not been able to silence them. You know, in the 70s, if you were a consumer group,
Yes.
you were regarded as subversive.
Oh.
Just being a consumer group, you were regarded as subversive. Being an environmental group, you were regarded as subversive. But these organizations persisted. Today, nobody bothers about, nobody says that they are sasat and all that, you see, because it's accepted. So I think in that respect, there are positive developments. The positive come negative development is the internet, the alternative
Yes.
media. Internet allows people to defecate in viral space.
Yes.
At the touch of a button, you know,
Anonymously. Yeah.
anonymously, yes. So I think that's the problem. But of course, there is also a great many people who spread love, who say nice things. But nice things don't get picked up by the newspapers.
Yes, that's true. It's not only not on the newspaper, you know, even on the social media
Yes,
it's the
yes.
same. What went viral will be the
Yes.
bad things.
A further factor is this, that's my last point here. A lot of the differences we see today are actually not about Islam and other religions.
Yes.
It's East versus West. Take for example the issue of same-sex marriages, homosexuality. It's not Islam versus other religions. Many other religions have the same traditional attitude.
Yes, yes.
It is actually more modern Western values, media values, TV values versus conservative values. But what is being pictured as Islam versus others, actually it's not Islam. I have Catholic friends who say,
No.
there is no way I'm going to support this. I have a very learned friend, very senior man who is actually in a very important organization, and when that organization took a stand in favor of same-sex marriage, he said, I'm going to associate myself with the organization. And he's a very senior man. So actually we are in many respects evolving towards democracy, a nascent democracy. And any change is always capable of disruption. You know, as in physics, all motion leads to friction.
Yes.
I think that's what is happening. There is motion towards more democracy, more free speech. And that's why it is causing...
So what we are
all these-
experiencing now is the friction.
Yes.
It's going to be over.
Yes. We are moving in the right direction, though the problem is this, and I may be wrong on this. I think those who are moderate, those who are compassionate, those who are learned, they tend to keep quiet. They are not mobilizing, whereas the other group is mobilizing. So it looks like that the hate mongers are in a majority. It's not necessarily so. I think we all have a duty to. You were saying the risks are there. Well, we have to take risks indeed.
Yes. Yes.
The tree of liberty has always been watered with the blood of martyrs.
It doesn't have to come to that.
Yeah. Let's not go there. Let's not go there. Yeah, Arun. So in your work, what do you think? Do you agree with
Actually, probably I'm not really 110% agreeing with Prof. That sentiment that the things are moving towards positive way and things like that. I think the influence of the fundamentalist, the conservative can be felt greater now, especially for the minority. I'll give an example. Probably go back like with the conversion issues. It has been like I can give you numbers. There's about 8,000 Hindus living with the Muslim documentation. okay, because there is no remedy for them to come back or stuff like that, they start practicing their religion, meaning they are, by practice, they're Hindus.
They're Hindus.
All right, but
Yes.
the name is Saleh.
Yeah.
There's a gentleman by the name
Yeah.
Abdul Shafiq, which owns a temple. All right, and right now we have families with the third generation. So where this one leading? And then, and these families are very bitter about Islam because they are tried repeatedly, and they are not being given the chance to fundamental rights. And to the point, we have a little over a dozen people that we have to take a death declaration that upon their death they want to be buried as a Hindu, and we know as a NGO and all the stuff, all this kind of thing, we have to take it to court, challenge in court and all the stuff, and going to be very messy. But again, every time that we go through a messy settlement on an issue, is every time that we are moving backward. Example right now we can see the entrance of Zakir Naik itself since 2012. We always know there is a lot of dagwa, ceramah, and all these years, but never one time we publicly do comparison between religion. We accept all of them. We don't compare. See, when our minds start to compare between religion, and then we can't we can be always level. And especially the type of ceramah that Zakir Naik bringing upon, using the wrong tafsiran from different religion to show, to arrive at wherever he want to be. So this one actually have brought Malaysia's racial and religious relation to the lowest point. To the lowest point. Just today, I had a press conference on Zamri Vinod's case, where the AGC decided to NFA, and the entire Hindu community think that their rights not been defended.
What's the Zamri case?
Zamri Vinod is the right hand man to Zakir Naik, delegated the Hinduism in one of the talk in Kelantan. Again, I do not know why everything happened in Kelantan, but this time it happened in Kelantan again, in December 2018, in which it was very wrong for him to do so in front of a Muslim crowd. And this particular video got viral, and there's about 1,000 over police report went against. There was 10,000 over Hindus went to the police station trying to seek legal remedies. And after all these days, and we saw last week, AGC said NFA. Despite PDRM recommending two charges, 298A and 233. So, and I was asking now.
298A is not a good idea. 298A only applies in Wilayah Persekutuan. 298A applies only in Wilayah Persekutuan.
Oh, really?
298 is all right, not 298A.
Okay, all right. So, and see, this kind of stuff, I think it's about time for the leaders, as Prof said correctly, to take a right decision more than a popular decision. Right now, this very government right now is chosen by those who wanted to be progressive. Okay, wanted to break away from the conservative way of doing stuff. Not only corruption, every part of our Malaysian lives. And right now we're seeing a regression from that position. And whether it's a personal freedom or everything else, especially when it comes to race and religion. And I think every issue now, even a car accident, are seen from the POV of race and religion. And why we are at this juncture? Because every time our legal system not only taking the decision based on the rule of law, but also trying to insert the views from race, religion, and all the other interests. That's where we are slowly regressing. So I'm from the ground. So I deal with the NGOs day in, day out, and we see a big jump from big jump in terms of confidence, people's confidence. I was asking AG today, all right, what do I tell the 10,000 people that took it to the police station and thought when somebody delegated their religion, they can find a remedy within our justice system? What do I tell them? What happened? What the same thing happened tomorrow? Can I tell them, guys, calm down, let's go through the legal system? They will not go. So then you're pushing a minority to act on their own. So who is the cause of it? And I think like AGC and the court system, every one of them in the legal system have a moral obligation, and not only always take the popular decision, the candy decision, but take the right decision so that put Malaysia back on the path that we all voted for, that we always wanted, like what you say, progressive. Yes, it's difficult, but it's not impossible. Yes, the American always say it gets messier before get better. It's okay to get messier, but we have to see some sort of hope in the future. And today I told them I was very, very I don't have hope. I do not know what else to do. When AGC, like I said, I can go to SPRM, all right, I say for abuse of power, say so, all right, it come and finally it comes to AGC. I can go to PDRM, help me out, okay, finally come to AGC. So what I do, go to Agong now. So minority group feel more stressed, and currently the same thing with Chinese brothers, and not only the minority, the non-Bhumi, the minority Bhumi. Yeah. Okay, I'm also heading a group with the Jawi Sakada. When I deal with Dayak, Kadazan, Iban, they all feel the same thing. The religion and the race supremacy imposed upon them, in which they're thinking they're losing the very characteristic of being Bhumi. So I think it's about time for us to ask the right question and take the right decision. And otherwise, the Malaysia that I envision 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, 50 years from now is very gloomy, very race and religion painted, and it is really scary. And I grew up about 20 years back in States, and when I came here, and yet in America too, there is a race and religion problem. But all those stuff, we always can seek a remedy in the legal system. I think fundamentally a country is in the right path because of their legal system. Because the legal system put them in the right place. If that very legal system it is playing up as a political, that's where we're in trouble. Really.
Going according to sentiment, right?
Yeah.
Which is, I think, what a lot of people are feeling now. All the different arms of the country,
The
of government, are all influenced by popular sentiment, and it's very
Yeah, I think the popular sentiment is the one more dangerous than anything else, because you're telling what they like to hear, not necessarily
the independence is lost. I completely agree. I think
and we feel that day in, day out, and it have gone south so bad in this past 2 years, and I can see the difference, and where we feel, whoa, stop. Probably we came with a lot of expectation, May 9th, but that could be one of the reason. But we see a lot of things that's really.
But this is exactly what I was saying. There is a game of scorched earth going on. It is deliberate attempt actually to keep the cauldron boiling.
Yes.
Yeah,
and it is boiling. Yes.
And I think the leaders have to now dispatch a really powerful way of putting this off and taking right decision. Like for one thing, for the friends of the Chinese and Indian and the Sabah Sarawak Slovakia, we can say whoever that creating the animosity and destroying the fabric that we always created in 62 years. My mom always say the Malaysia that I always enjoy. My mom until today watches P. Ramlee's movies, and she's still the only her world stops I think about say 80s 90s or so, because after that she don't remember any of the movies, but her world is right for P. Ramlee, and every movie, every song she really. And she said this is not the Malaysia that we always enjoyed and so proud of. Right now she said she's always call me, hey, what's happening, I heard this, I heard that, and I can see she's 84 now, and like she's sad, and she's one person that we all have to convince. There's 36 votes in my family. All right, we have convinced. She's the final lady that say, fine, okay, I'm going to do I'm going to follow what my kids want, and voted for the change. And she said, I told you so. I told you so.
Well,
I mean, I'm just saying lah. So, but I'm saying the sentiment is something need to be done urgently.
Yes.
Otherwise, there will be a stage is unretrievable. And I think it takes only a small little spark. An accident can be seen as a racial issue. We are in actually some really danger juncture. Don't we think so? It's just merely an accident between two persons. Right? And it's all got viral.
We don't have the kind of leadership that can put things like this to rest and say that this is not about race or religion, but it's about a larger issue of, whatever.
but I
it
guess,
might be.
when our leader don't do something, then we as people have to do something, like what you've mentioned. There are a lot of progressive Malaysians and who have that kind of, aspiration that we wanted a better Malaysia where we can tolerate, or we can find we can embrace the differences between each other and then tolerate each other. I think this aspiration could only be achieved when we all play our parts. When I say all, it's not only the leader, because just now we discuss about the leaders, that the leaders should be molding opinions, but when the leader don't mold opinion, and when they are populist, they are leaning towards populist, I think much of the voices of those progressive or those much more rational should be heard. And I think many Malaysians try not to make their stance.
I think that's the issue. I think with the last election, we thought we were bringing in a different type of leadership.
Yes.
And now we are slowly realizing that the work is not yet done. There's a lot more to go, because the leadership is not actually rising to the challenge.
Because it is just scary. Just in recent days, due to the Jawi issue, Jawi cut issue, there was a tweet by Syed Saddiq about our movement, and he put their connotations calling a Bodo Sombong. So immediately, it induced about 10,000 racial comment to that Twitter and the Facebook. I was wondering, this many people hate us just because I'm legitimate concern towards the implementation of this particular Jawi card, right? So where is this moderate mind? Where is the progressive mind? Why wouldn't?
But I think you should be very careful when you are interpreting or reading the trolls on the internet.
The numbers, they don't reflect.
They don't reflect. Some of those accounts, I don't know who they are.
There's nobody behind them.
Yes, there are
And
people
actually
behind
the
them.
same like-minded people are on the account.
Yes. And because they are the same
they pass to
like-minded
each
people,
other.
they are in their echo chambers. They come to you. So it's the algorithm that's also playing some games,
Could be.
that's showing you that this is the Malaysian that you think it is. But I think sometimes you are on the ground. When we go to the ground, we see a lot of very sensible people. I think these are the good sides of Malaysians that we must always put in our mind. And
I think you should do that as an experiment. The negative comments, try and look who's behind it, because you can go through the positive. You will always see an individual behind it. You will see family photos, and
actually I can see but right now, okay, people have pretty much a social media life and the real life. Okay, especially the Y generation. Okay, and then the Z generation now. So this is a generation that's going to be leading in the future, right?
Yeah.
And this group are totally social media savvy. I mean, if I put anything in email, nobody reads now. So I have to put it on Twitter or in Facebook, right? So
Yeah,
it's like-
nobody reads email.
Yeah.
Conversation
especially
moves so
Twitter.
fast.
See,
Yes.
Twitter, right?
Conversation moves
And
so
it
fast.
just take
and-
anytime you tweet, it goes viral, right? So I don't remember the last time I really emailed to everybody. It's like whether you put it in Facebook or you tweet it out, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's important for us to acknowledge the influence of social
The
media.
power of it, yeah.
The power is one thing, and also influence of social media in our day-to-day thinking process. See, there's already some unconscious information back there that will decide the way we perceive the Malaysia we are, we perceive the race religion relationship, the way it perceive a conversion matter, and things like that. So serious.
Yeah, you're bringing out a lot of issues. Now we're talking about media literacy, how people behave on social media, how they know what's wrong or what's right, what's true, what's real news or what's fake on social media. That's a lot of things. But I guess, it has been an hour since our discussion. I think we have brought out a lot of very good points. We should tell, I think maybe we should act the way that we should act. We should be the Malaysian that we want to be, and then maybe we can show some examples to our political leaders that hey, your votes is somewhere here, here and not there, so they won't be like pandering to populists and all those things. I think there are many issues, and I think we can sum this up. This is a very good discussion. I think we brought out a lot of questions, we brought out a lot of issues, but maybe we just have to be very hopeful about the future. We just have to play our role. And thank you so much. Thank you so much to come here on a public holiday to discuss such a hot topic. All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us tonight. It's a public holiday. I know it's very difficult, but this is an issue that we think is very important, and all Malaysians should have their say in it, and they should actually get to know about it before they really have a say in it. So good night till we see you again.